What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Tactical Ambitions. And today, so happy to have the one and I'm glad I was able to snag you off the SHOT Show floor. But Amanda Rose, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So I want you to give everyone a quick little 30-second rundown. Who you are. Your background is so interesting. You've almost lived like
multiple lives.
10 lives, right? And you look like you're 18. So, to let people know, she's a grown woman, but she's lived incredible amount. Don't let her youthful appearance fool you. Give everyone the rundown of where you started and just like the little background to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, I've been in the industry for 15 years. I started off in the military. So military at 17, I went in as military police. Halfway through my military career, I was recruited into criminal investigations as a special agent. When I was 22, hired by the CIA. I've been in volunteer firefighting, law enforcement, counterintelligence, counterterrorism. I've really had the honor of just fulfilling the gamut of personal protection in kind of all different areas in my career. Mm-hmm. Love it. It's really all I've known between the government and the military, and got out of it. And now I get to do government contracting with our special operations community and a ton of other cool stuff I get to tell you about. I know you have a lot of like secret ninja backwoods kind of things. And I know you can't probably disclose some of the things that you've done, but what I'm most excited about and what I've heard people now talking about when your name comes up is you've now ventured into your own business of sorts where you're doing training, and it's specifically geared toward females. Yes.
So tell me about that. Give it all. The name, the concept, the why.
Yeah, so I started Athena Tactics. It's the Protectress Academy. Really, my focus is equipping women to protect themselves physically through lethal and non-lethal options, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Like literally, what does it look like to put on the armor of God every day? What does it look like to prevent ourselves as women from getting into situations where we may need to use our gun and hopefully never have, that day to come?
Yeah.
Growing up in the industry, I had a lot of instruction, a lot of different instructors, and I learned firsthand as a woman going through the industry the things that don't work for me, and the men along the way that were kind of like, just do the thing, just do it this way. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're telling me, right? Like as women, we learn differently. We receive information differently.
Yeah.
And I got to the point of asking myself, well, how can I leverage everything that I've learned and I've been equipped with? And then how can I bridge the gap with women in our industry and give them the confidence and the capabilities to get into the firearm community, have a home defense plan, learn to conceal carry, and really just take their personal protection into their own hands.
One of the things we're doing now at 221B Tactical is putting together these little kits. And this is coming from people, moms, dads from across the country who they say, listen, I don't own a gun. I am not a tactical Navy SEAL ninja. Mm-hmm. Never was in law enforcement, never was in the military. However, I have this concern that the world that we live in is changing.
Yeah.
And not sure what's going to happen, but feel like something is going to happen. And if that happens, want to have something in my home ready.
Yeah.
Some stuff. I don't know what it might be, but give us some stuff. So we're putting together these little home defense or bug out kits. We don't call them bug out because that's not what common people, you say that to a regular family living in suburbia. They're like, what's bug out, right? Tactical dudes know that. So it's almost like a home preparedness, home event, traumatic event preparedness kit. But a lot of the women we are speaking to now are asking about training, and they're asking about different avenues of where they could learn to either learn about self-defense, maybe learn about owning a firearm more. And I'm sure you've heard this stat. Since COVID, more women and minorities have taken up firearms than like pretty much anything else. So that is something you have to be seeing in your world. So we talk to a lot of single moms who they're the family's protector. They maybe have no husband or they have no partner. So that it's them. It's them protecting their children. So once again, they're learning, hey, how do I learn some self-defense? Maybe I need to get a weapon now. Things are changing. We've seen these mobs of people coming into neighborhoods now. We're seeing, people. You probably saw the video. The woman who was just driving through some protest. She was in the car by herself. She was almost like a senior woman, and they started shaking her car and dragging her out. And it's craziness what's going on. So, are you seeing more of that coming to you for trade?
Yeah, so I really love this conversation, women getting into this sector, because there's so much more to your home defense plans and the personal protection side. And I'm just going to be candid about this. I'm not a feminist. I don't believe in and push that women should be doing it all and women don't need men to do it. I believe that men have that role in the home and men are the protectors. However, men can't always be there.
Sure.
Men go to work, they have obligations, they're away from the home. Women are primarily more with their children, or they're out and about on their own, or they're running the errands. They leave the house, they go to work, right? They have to be on their own.
Yeah.
So how do we equip the family unit to be a cohesive unit? How do we equip you to have the communication skills, the plans in place? And then, there's a lot of women who are single moms. A lot of my clients are over the age of 50. They are either divorced after many, 20 plus years, and this is their first time being on their own. God bless their souls. And they're like, hey, this is my first time actually being able to do this. I don't even know where to start. And I think a 55-year-old woman trying to go to a male instructor, just walk into a gun store, is extremely intimidating, and it's scary. It's scary for me sometimes, and I've been in the industry for 15 years. Right. But I walk in and I already know the looks I'm gonna get, and it is a little uncomfortable. And sometimes, maybe they're a little condescending, or you just don't know what you're getting. So women getting into this industry and just this conversation taking place about families saying, we want to be prepared. We want to have everything that we need. We want to be prepped and ready to go. And what does that look like? What kind of survival kit? What kind of home defense kit do I need that's going to allow us to do the thing? But that's great. You send the kit, but then now what's the training side? All right, we just got this brand new kit. What do we do with it? Right. How do we prep it? I go into people's homes. I do custom home defense plans for them. We walk through and talk through different scenarios. Okay, if X, Y, and Z happens and you're in the bedroom, or you're here, or you're there, what are your points of egress? Where do you keep your guns? How do you store them? Okay, you're out and you're running errands with the whole family and the kids are in the back. And mom and dad say this word. Do the kids know exactly what they're supposed to do? What's the chain of command, right? What's happening? Hey, we're not playing games now. Are you running these drills and exercises with your family and your kids at 2:00 in the morning on a Friday night, of course? We know that there's school, right? Just prepping the family. You can buy all the products in the world. You can have all the guns in the world. But if you don't know how to adequately use them, what their purpose is, and you develop that muscle memory, they're not going to mean anything to you. And that's a huge part of when I train in the academy that I run, I bridge the gap between the science side and the tactical side. I do a lot of focus on developing the neural pathways in the brain and the body. And one of the examples I use with new shooters, it's like when you have a child and you're teaching them to catch a ball for the first time. The first few times you throw them the ball, what are they doing? They're just like, ha,
hits them.
Right? Hits them in the face. That's what's happening. I have to hit you in the face so many times before we develop those neural pathways in your body. And a lot of instructors will just kind of take people and they throw them out into the range and they put a gun in their hand and they're like, great, here's the gun, here's the trigger, here's the 4 safety rules, now shoot it. And then it becomes a very traumatizing experience to people, and it's very traumatizing for women. So I'm really trying to break the mold on that. But I think with what you guys are doing, rolling out training plans and bringing that together on preparing families, but making it come full circle.
Yeah, we want to now, which I mentioned to you before off camera, we're doing some a training element now because we realized we're providing gear, but so many people who are now our new customer base, the civilian marketplace, coming to our website, they're looking for gear, but they're also looking for training to know how to use the gear and prepare with the gear. So having a resource to say, hey, are you a female?
Yeah.
Here's a resource. We just had Tony Blauer on. You know, we had Phil from Waft in Florida on, who brings in entire families. You bring your wife, your kids, everyone's in the coffee shop, and here's the scenario, right?
Yes.
So that's like, it's another level of training. So we're going to have all these outlets to find people like you for our customer base that's coming in, and they're scared, they're nervous.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know what to do in certain situations, and it is very intimidating for a female to walk into your typical gun store and, you know, see the typical gun store guy there. Oh man, what am I going to do here? If, you know, there was a time, thankfully that's changed, but there was a time, it might still happen in certain places, where a woman would walk into a gun store and the person's like looking like, where's your husband? Right? Like,
is that your husband's truck?
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
No, what are you talking about? This is mine. So,
yeah, like I'm ready to go. Like I want this for me.
So what do you see as some of the biggest fears and biggest apprehensions with the women you're working with?
The media's agenda. I get a lot of women who, a lot of their fears are just based around what is put in front of them, what they're told. There's some of these, you know, and I'm sure maybe you've heard this before. Women are scared and fearful to carry guns because they just don't understand how they work. I've had girlfriends over the years that if, you know, I'm having one of my girlfriend's sleepovers, right? Like I like to have my gun holstered and it's out and it's ready to go on my, you know, somewhere near distance, grabbing distance, right? And I had one girlfriend over the years, and every time we'd be hanging out, she's like, "Can you please put your gun away?" And I'm like, "It's not doing anything." She's like, "Yeah, I'm just scared it's gonna go off." And I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about this. Let's have this conversation." Yeah. And when I started realizing that this is actually a pretty common fear that women face, is that they just don't understand the mechanisms of a firearm and what actually makes it operate. I started introducing that into some of my intro classes and be like, look, let's draw this out and let's talk about how this actually works. And when I can start removing the fears and you have the deep understanding of how the gun works, you're like, oh, okay, that's not bad. And I'm like, yeah, guys, look, if guns were just popping off left and right in your purse or just randomly in your holster or in your, you know, on your nightstand, don't you think the media would be talking about that? They'd have a field day with that, right? To try to take our guns away. Of course. So there's just that side of it of just not understanding the firearm. And you know it's a deadly weapon. You know it can kill somebody. And we have to respect that. When you respect the gun respects you. Yeah. But adding the education side into it, that helps with the confidence. I push trigger control a lot because when you know when the gun is going to go off, you have a lot more confidence in that side too. And then some of the fears and apprehensions, of course, are that, well, my husband carries, he can do it, and I don't need to. And I'm like, I hear you. However, he can't always be there. Like, let's look at statistically. Women are the number one targets for crime, for violent attack, not crime, but, you know, violent attacks or any violent encounter. Why is that? We're viewed as softer, weaker, meek, docile. We're feminine. We're soft, loving, kind, you know, graceful, patient creatures for the most part. We want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. Look at domestic violence. Most women who are statistically in some kind of traumatizing violent encounter, whether it's, you know, being robbed, stalked, a break-in, raped, any of those things, statistically, it's by somebody that we know, right? We know that.
Correct.
And it's no fault to ourselves. I am not blaming women, but more often than not, we put ourselves in the situation because we invited that person into our life, unbeknownst to us. Yes. How are we supposed to know? Right. You get into a relationship with somebody. He's a great guy. You love him. He's sweet. He's charming. He's all these things. Of course you're going to be, you know, like and fall for him. The next thing you know, those things start changing. And before you know it, you're in an abusive relationship. Or you're out at a group with some friends, or at a party with a group of friends, and hey, this is my buddy, Joe, whatever. You should meet him. And then a couple of drinks later, next thing you know, Joe's pulling you into a bedroom because, oh, well, now you're friends. It's typically something that we introduced into our world. And it's not women's fault, but it's more rare that it's going to be a person just off the street, right?
Yeah.
So it's educating and preparing and removing the apprehension and putting the power back into their hands of being able to protect themselves, but also being able to identify what is a threat and putting the guards up of knowing threats are around you all the time. Just because it's somebody that it's a coworker, it's a boss, it's a brother, it's a dad, whoever these people are, is identifying and adding in the situational awareness side, the observation, the critical skills, thinking, right? It's the mental and it's the emotional skill sets that we have to equip ourselves so that we don't get into those situations.
So when you say, essentially, women are these walking targets, if you would. They're out there, and for the most part, criminals are looking, if they see you walking down the street and they see me walking down the street, what criminal is going to choose, unless they're come so high on drugs or something. They're 99.9999 going to choose you. Right?
Absolutely.
So, and once again, that's nothing against women or anything.
No, it's not.
Just, you look at a criminal, you ask any piece of garbage criminal anywhere in the world, which these two are you going to choose to go mug, take their wallet, take their watch, take their phone, whatever it might be. Of course, they're going to point the finger at you. So getting that mindset into women to say, this is why you always, no matter where you are, have to be on extra high alert, meaning if you pointed to a woman you're working with in one of your training courses and you pointed at me and said, does he need to be as alert as you? No, he needs to be alert, but not as alert as you need to be.
It's a different level of alertness.
It's a different level. Yeah. So when you're talking about these things, as far as maybe when women are by themselves, I also like to talk about the fact that if you're in a situation where you're with your husband and you're with your children, talk about how a woman can be an asset and not a liability in that situation.
That's that cohesive unit. You're a team.
Yeah. So do you work with that as well? Because I know the women are coming to you, but they may go home to a husband that is proficient with firearms, is that protector, is that man, but they may go back to a home to a man that is not a protector, not a gun owner. What conversations do you have with women like that?
Yeah, so I do specialize in family units too, right? Couples, families, women. And I love this because I actually have a client and I love them to death. I respect them. And they actually have this deal worked out. Every time she gets to buy a new gun, he gets to buy a new Lego set. And I know it's a thing, like that's his interest, that's his passion. Like he just has no interest in firearms. A very similar experience that a lot of my female clients have. Somebody put a gun in their hands for the first time, took them to the range. It was a small little concealed, a lot of recoil, big loud bang, and we're just like, oh, I don't like this. So that can happen to men too. Just because you're a man doesn't mean you're just naturally going to be like, oh, I just got this. It's not a natural born instinct in shooting a firearm. Your experience is going to dictate what that's going to look like for you.
Correct.
And if you're a man that doesn't come from law enforcement background, military background, anything in the first responder world, maybe you're an accountant, maybe you love numbers, maybe you love history, you have your passions. Yeah. That's not going to be organic for you in your home. Yeah. So I do have these women that come to that come to me and they're like, oh, I'd love to do this with my husband or the family. And honestly, there's men who are also intimidated by going to, a male instructor who's, 200 pounds, covered in tattoos, got the big, the beard, and was like, oh, I was like a ranger, I'm a Green Beret, all the time. And we love those guys. They have a purpose. I love them. I respect them. But it's okay to say, just because you're a man or your family, you have no background and you're like, I want to learn this, but I don't really know where to start. And I feel like as a man, maybe I'm supposed to know these things. So there's a little bit of insecurity that kind of plays into that. And being able to create that environment for these families to come to me and say, hey, we want to do this, but we want to do this together. And I respect him and he respects me, and we respect what our roles are going to be. And how can we kind of learn to be a power couple in this new skill set together? But then sometimes I get men that they don't want anything to do with it. And they're okay with the fact that, she wants to be the protector and she's going to be the protector, and he's going to defer to her in that situation and respect her. And that's okay too. It's a matter of like what's going to work best for your family, but being able to, create that space, that healthy space in the family unit, for that to happen. So I love working with families. I love working with couples. I really love the progression of them being able to go through training together. And it's a bonding experience too. And you learn to like admire your partner and your spouse in a different way. When like, babe, I got your back. I got your six. And then they like live that out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When you are building out your programming, are you looking to focus toward a certain demographic? Like I said, mainly women, but are you seeing a different approach you have to take with younger female shooters or younger females looking for this training versus someone like you said, they're in their 50s, they were married for 20 plus years, now they're divorced, and now they're finding themselves, okay, I'm in this situation? Because there's an element of when you're talking about shooting or learning how to shoot a gun, there's almost an element that says you should learn that early in life. It's a life skill, whether you are going to go become a hunter or some kind of crazy outdoors person or whatever. That's not really the point. The point is, I look at it as, and some people don't agree with this, I look at it as learning to drive a stick shift.
That's one of the examples I use.
Right. So when I was younger and I was learning to drive, someone who was teaching me how to drive also at the same time was saying, we're going to teach you how to drive stick shift as well. And I was like, I'm never going to drive a stick shift, but I just want to drive that automatic.
Yeah,
right? I just want to get my license, pass the test. I don't need that to pass the test. But they told me, they said, listen, I'm not teaching you to drive a stick shift, a manual, because you're going to own a manual car. You may never own one. I'm teaching you to drive a manual in the event one day you are in a situation where you need to drive a manual because there's no other option, you will have the knowledge and the foundation. You may not be good at it because, I'm teaching you at 17 and it may not be till 27 or maybe even 37 that event occurs and you need to do it. But at least you'll have a baseline there. You'll have an idea of letting off the clutch slow, applying the gas. You'll have that. So when it comes to reaching, let me say, that younger generation of female shooters, where maybe that sense of mama bear protection, they haven't had kids yet, they're not married, they don't have a home or anything like that. It changes a little bit, right? It changes a little bit. I know the women in my world, their mindset about even owning a gun, learning how to shoot a gun, anything related to firearms or, protection was completely different the moment they had children.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Prior to that, they were kind of like, oh, yeah, they had children and they're like, okay, wait, what if someone breaks into our house? Like a year ago, when you did have a child, you weren't thinking about, what happens if someone...
Yeah, there's a big mind shift.
Now so how do you approach different people in those different demographics, especially, I'm sure you're someone who's a proponent of younger women getting behind this and getting some training. What's your messaging toward them?
So there's definitely a few different categories. I have my older demographic that this is kind of like their third life that they're living. I have my mama bears, single moms that live alone. The younger demographic is an interesting one. And I'm going to say this in the most respectful way, is we've seen a shift in parenting and how people parent. And there's these different terms that were kind of launched in the industry. And, one of them is like the helicopter parent, right? So you have these parents who have been very protective of their kids. Now you have these kids getting ready to go off to college, and now they're on their own for the first time. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing this shift of, oh my gosh, I can't helicopter anymore. I can't be there for my baby anymore. Well, hold on. Like, I need to make sure that they have their pepper spray ready and their taser ready, and they need all of the things in order. So now there's this shift of the younger women who are getting ready to go off and kind of be on their own for the first time. And they're seeing a lot of the crime. They're seeing, especially with social media, these young women who are putting themselves out there on social media. They're doing their thing. Do your thing, girl. Do it.
Yeah.
But now there's a lot of exposure, and now you're creating a target for yourself. So now you're a young adult, a young lady going off to college, or maybe you just graduated college and now you're getting your first apartment on your own. Totally different culture that you're experiencing. And now they're getting, the DMs from guys. They're getting men who want to go out on dates with them, but they're not interested. In my area, we had a guy, and he hasn't even been caught yet, who was breaking into women's apartments and stealing their panties. He was stalking our sorority at our local college. One of my clients, he broke into her apartment 2 times. He went back to her apartment twice, even though she upgraded her locks, put cameras all over the place. He was on a mission. Like, it's traumatizing for them. So there's the side of women who we think that we're invincible. We don't need it. We're kind of, we're just kind of going about our lives. And it's unfortunate that it takes something scary and traumatic to happen first before we realize that we need this kind of training. So for her, sweet, she's an earth angel. But it wasn't until her apartment got broken into 2 times that all of a sudden she was like, I need to get training. I don't know anything. Thank God she wasn't at home both times when it happened. But then you see that effect that it has on women. And it is just a traumatizing experience. So the way that I teach doesn't necessarily change based on the demographic. It will change a little bit based on the person's experience. So is this one of my ladies that are in our local safe shelter that's in and coming out of domestic violence? That approach is going to be wildly different than a 25-year-old girl that comes to me who's never shot a gun. She thankfully and fortunately hasn't experienced anything traumatizing yet. She's just saying, hey, I want to be prepared in case that day comes, which is going to be different from the woman who comes to me and says, yeah, I was just, held at gunpoint.
Assaulted.
Or something, which I've dealt with all different walks. The actual methodology, like I was saying before, is really the science approach. We see the flinch response, the flinch in a new shooter. What's our body telling us, right? You know everything that you know. When you flinch, if I go to punch you in the face, you flinch naturally. Why? Because your body, your nervous system is saying, whoa, danger, danger, danger. That's a threat. I don't like it.
Yes.
But we don't listen to that. Then you put a gun in someone's hand and they keep flinching. Well, because their nervous system is saying, whoa, I don't like that. It's traumatizing. So now we're putting somebody in a very traumatizing experience. We can see that their body is rejecting it. It doesn't like it because it doesn't know enough. There's not enough neural pathways built. And we're kind of going from like 0 to 100 really fast. And then we wonder why women and different people come into the industry and they're like, no, this doesn't feel good. I can't tell you why I don't like shooting. I'm just telling you that something in my body is telling me that I don't like it. So how do we change that? And how do we correct it? And that's really the approach that I take is the crawl, walk, run. And I work on developing the nervous system, introducing into those areas first. So it doesn't matter if you're coming out of a traumatizing experience, you're a 20-year-old girl and you don't know anything about firearms, this is your first time, or you're 60 and this is your first time shooting a gun too, you're doing it. The overall approach is meant for any woman getting into it. And then I just tailor it to that person's background.
That's awesome. And that's something that I think is probably a little bit uncommon in your space. Everyone has a backstory. and some people have no backstory.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to treat everyone differently in that. So what's next? What's the next iteration of what you want to do? What do you want to grow this into?
Yeah. It's super exciting because when I first had this vision, it was really like God kind of like downloading into my mind, like, okay, Amanda, like this is really what I want you to do. And this is how I want you to do it. And I was like, Lord, this is my calling. Like, this is what we're going to do. Like, okay. And I really had to pray on it and reflect deeply on this is the calling, but then how do I execute it?
Yeah.
And I knew that my calling was working with women in domestic violence and sex trafficking and just empowering women to take their personal protection in their own hands. But what I've seen in the industry, and I'm not categorizing this to everyone, we have phenomenal instructors in our industry. But there are some, and I call it the puppy mill syndrome, where these instructors in these firearms academies are kind of just like putting on these like women's basic pistol class or intro to a firearm. And it's like a 1 or 3 hour, maybe even a half day class for women. And then that's it. And then there's always the what's next? Well, what's next? Well, what's next? Well, what do I do? And we teach women how to use a firearm, but we don't teach women how to prevent using a firearm. And then we teach people how to use a firearm, but we don't really teach people what to do after they use the firearm. So when I started writing out my curriculum and kind of expressing what my frustrations were currently in the industry and in the instructing community, it was, well, how do I build this whole person concept with women? So for the long-term vision and what I'm like so excited to be able to finally deliver this year is really a woman's academy. It's a 6-month academy that you go through. You do your private lessons. I have workshops, clinics, seminars, subject matter experts. We equipped you to protect yourself, not only through teaching you how to shoot a gun, introducing you to concealed carry. We go over defensive shooting, marksmanship shooting, concealed carry. It's workshops and seminars and clinics that dive into developing your mental awareness, your observation skills. Do you know what it looks like to be tailed or stalked? I teach you how to stalk. I teach you how to track. If you can track an animal, you can track a human. If you know how to track a human, you know when you're being tracked by a human. So we go way more into just teaching women how to shoot guns. I teach these women, almost how to be like a modern day, their own kind of like spy, right?
Yeah,
like
their own little Jason Bourne,
yeah,
right?
Exactly, right? And it just comes full circle, and it's more than that, right? It's how do you identify narcissism? What does narcissism look like? It's a term that keeps getting thrown around nowadays. Gaslighting. Oh, he's so narcissist. Yeah. And or narcissistic, right? And what do we do, and how do we identify that? How do we prevent ourselves from getting into the situation? How do we put down healthy boundaries as a woman, whether it's in your workplace, it's in your friendships, it's in your relationships, it's in your family life? Yeah. So the academy is like a full-fledged experience that you're going to get everything. You're going to learn how to put on a tourniquet. You're going to learn the legal liability. You're going to learn post-incident response. You're going to have that plan in place. If you and your wife are out somewhere and she has to use her firearm, you're going to want to know about it, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so do we teach, how often are we having the conversation of, okay, I call 911, I call my attorney. Do you have an attorney, right? Do you have a defense attorney? Okay, now I want to call my spouse. We know, coming from law enforcement backgrounds, anything that you say after using that gun, you're going to court. We know that you're going to get charged. And until it's determined if it's a good shoot or not, you're going to go through the whole process. Yeah. Which means that prosecutor is going to use everything they can against you. Because although bad guy's bad guy has family. Yeah. And family, not a bad guy. My son was a saint, or my daughter was a saint. They never did anything wrong. So what's your code word to your spouse? Honey, I was in a shooting. I'm okay. I'm alive. I'm safe. This is, I'll call you later. Or whatever that conversation is. You might see some things on the news. Don't turn the news on. Don't call. Don't answer the phone. Yeah. Don't talk to anybody. You have to have those conversations ahead of time.
Not in the midst of it.
Not in the midst of it, right? Because anything, you're going to want to ask questions, and your spouse has to be on the same page, and your spouse has to know, or your kids. Yes. If you're single and you're a single parent, your kids need to be on the same page. You can't be asking questions. You can't be texting your friends. If the news, the police, anybody, well, police, obviously, if they come to your house, talk to them, right?
Right.
But anybody starts asking questions. So it's the preparedness side. It's the full circle preparedness. And I want to create that next step. When people say, well, what's next? I'm delivering it.
Yeah.
And then there's advanced programs. It's literally an academy for everything personal protection, but delivering it to women and families.
Where can women watching this, or maybe even obviously some men watching this, who maybe want to share this with the women in their world, where can they find out more about this?
They can go to my website, athenatactics.com. I have an Instagram. Really hard to do social media when you're the one doing all the training all the time, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
And I'm based in Idaho. So you can come to me in Idaho. My main academy is based out of Idaho, but I do travel and we'll go do universities or families or private groups in other locations if they just want, multi-day classes and courses, and then just kind of go from there.
So I want you to leave, especially some of the women watching this, but really in general, what is one thing that someone can do today that will potentially keep them in a better state of preparedness for tomorrow should an event occur, whether it deals with a firearm or not? What's something because Americans today are scared. There's so much going on. Crime is spiking. Violent crime is out of control in certain cities around the country. It's bleeding into some, suburban neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And fear of home invasion, fear of getting, surrounded by a mob around your vehicle, when you're traveling. All these concerns are out there. That's why people are coming to us for our gear, and they're looking for body armor for, their purse or their backpack, their kid's backpack, and all this crazy stuff, which it almost hurts us that we have to even have these like body armor for kids.
Right.
Like, you don't even want to have that. But after 1,000 people ask you for it, it's kind of like you need it.
Yeah.
So what's something you can share? What's the one thing?
Oh, I don't know that there's just one thing. I mean, I think as Americans, we're reactive rather than active, and we typically love to wait until something happens before how many school shootings and things that needed to happen before people started asking you for child's body armor, right?
Right.
It's kind of cliche, but I think it goes back to like your instincts. Our body tells us everything that we need to know, and often we ignore it. So women, we have incredible instincts, and human behavior, we have our instincts and we have innate behavior. And it's taking the time out and the awareness to actually listen to those instincts.
Yeah.
It is your brain is absorbing everything around you all of the time. When you leave the grocery store and you're scanning the parking lot, something in you is telling you if it doesn't feel right, or hey, that guy's still standing there and he's kind of weird, or this person keeps following me. There's always something inside of you.
Yeah.
Or the red flags that you see when you start dating somebody that we decide to ignore, right?
Yes.
It really is just listening and honing in on that and doing exercises and drills that you can do with your family. Call me if you don't know what they are. There's these different exercises and skill sets that you can develop that actually teaches you what those instincts feel like. And when something in your body happens, you then being like, oh, this thing is happening. I know what this means. This is what my body and my instincts are telling me because of everything that I've absorbed and my life experience has taught me.
Yeah.
Looking for anomalies, clusters and anomalies. So it really goes back to that. I think if you can just start there and start developing those instincts and tuning them because you have them, it's a matter of how you use them, then everything can kind of come off of that.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And also, you probably deal with a lot of people who come to you after a traumatic event. Yeah. Don't wait for the traumatic event.
Don't wait.
Don't wait for that traumatic event. Like, get the training, get a baseline foundation of knowledge before that event occurs. Because I tell people, and you probably tell people the same thing, get the baseline, and having that alone could prevent the event from occurring.
That's it. Your baseline is going to show you when there's anomalies. Yeah. Your baseline is going to show you what those changes are going to be after. Your baseline is going to set the precedence of, do I walk into that gas station even though something's kind of telling me something's off, or hey, I'm in the gas station, XYZ just happened. I'm now in, condition orange. I feel like there might be a threat. Let me start, casually untucking my blouse a little. Let me start getting ready and changing my posture that if I need to draw my gun real quick, I can. Are you doing dry fires, dry draws before you leave the house every day when you're deciding what you want to carry and how you're carrying? It is a preparedness. It is establishing your baseline and then growing from there. And oftentimes we just don't have that baseline, whether it's in our physical skill set or it's our mental skill set.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is incredible. I'm going to have all your information so everyone can find you below the video, and then we're also going to be adding you to our website.
Oh,
so we need to get some
I would love that.
Some beautiful photos and some information. So when people are on our website looking for our gear and things like that, and they're looking for that training element, we're going to have that training resource as well. Thank you so much. I know it's been a crazy week here, SHOT Show.
It's been an awesome week.
Thank you for taking the time. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.